Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Ms. Menard. My line of questioning for Mr. Pepper dealt mostly with maximum contaminant limits and CERCLA. Could you address those questions as well, please, from your community's perspective?
Thank you. Yes. I think the CERCLA question in our community is mostly on the wastewater side, and to some degree, we have it in our surface water, but at a really, really low level. So I'm not too concerned about the CERCLA issues for solids coming from the water treatment plant, but obviously we're looking at that. But also it's on the wastewater side is one of the places where the CERCLA liability is really getting looked at, because they obviously get water coming from households and businesses, and those sources can often have other additional adds of the PFAS. I think that on the question of the impacts I mentioned in my earlier comments about looking at granular activated carbon and its capital cost plus its operating cost, that does potentially represent a long-term concern. But I also know that it's really important in my community for there to be a strong commitment and strong action on improving the quality and being good stewards of the quality of the treated water that's delivered. So in my community, we have a strong preference for doing what we can to to deal with these issues that come, including other constituents of emerging concern, pharmaceuticals, personal care products, those kinds of things that fall in the source waters that we use. And those things are being planned for as part of our treatment plan upgrade.
Thank you. There are other committee hearings going on this afternoon. We have some members of the committee that are elsewhere but wanted some questions asked for the record. This one for Mr. Pepper. There are concerns within the water sector that funding decisions that are prioritizing environmental justice factors are unrelated to water quality and health. This could potentially impact the affordability of water services for rural communities, which already face unique challenges such as limited funding, technical expertise, and resources. The question is this: do you believe the emphasis on non-water infrastructure policies and potential biases that are related to environmental justice decision-making might affect affordability of water services in rural areas?
Thank you for that question. Yeah. And I guess from the West and from my perspective, a lot of the issue that we have is define disadvantaged or environmental justice centers or constituents. And I would contend that a lot of rural America, whether it's Northeast, South, or West, works with those. We have a declining population base in a lot of those areas, which further puts strain on affordability in those small communities, aging communities, and disadvantaged, I believe, can be socioeconomic. And that crosses all races and goes into how do we look at that on a countrywide basis as opposed to certain pockets. So yes, some of those biases, I think, can play into the affordability index and makes it far difficult to define more than anything.
Yeah, the question comes from someone who is concerned that environmental justice is being used as a term to steer resources towards low-income urban areas at the expense of rural areas. Mr. Jones, do you see that?
I haven't seen that so much in California. I think the communities we work with are certainly both rural and environmental justice communities.
So as you deform rural, so you distinguish, you separate it. There's rural and there's environmental justice communities.
And a community could be both.
Okay.
For sure. And I think, and maybe that, the disadvantaged community definition we use in California is 80% state statewide income level. And so certainly for the Valley and areas that we primarily work in, most communities are able to qualify, unfortunately, just because of the level of income inequality in the state.
Okay.
But I haven't seen so much of a dynamic there in California, at least.
Mr. Pepper, any closing remarks on that point?
I think he hit it very well in that it just depends on the level of income in any area. You know, in our state of Wyoming, there's several counties that are impacted in low income, but define lower income. A lot of those are ag related, so there's a different accounting in an ag business than there is in residential. So I think there's, again, it comes back down to definitions. And I would say that it does appear in some respects, even in Wyoming, some of the urban thrust versus the rural thrust is there. So that should be addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back, and I want to thank the witnesses for attending today and providing your expertise to the subcommittee.